found out probably halfway through year 2, maybe the beginning of year 3, found out that we were losing money on every single turnover.
Jacob Mueller is the co-founder of Renjoy,
who in just 3 years scaled his tech-driven short-term rental business to over 200 units.
I started in real estate when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I hated it.
How were you able to capture the market in such a short amount of time? It's only been like 3 years, right? 3 years?
There's no like secret sauce to making that happen. It's definitely a big part of it. It's basically, hey, just start, right? Whether it's small, big, whatever your vision is, just get the ball rolling.
There's a level of like tech that you bring in, automations that you're bringing to hospitality. Talk about that element of it and what makes you guys different as well.
We were like, no. We're gonna be data first. We're gonna own the data. We're gonna control the data. Our big goal, 10 years, we want 1,000 units.
Is there one thing you would have done differently. That would have saved you a lot of money?
Yeah. Oh yeah. The whole accounting process is far more complex than I had ever imagined. And it was the thing I most greatly underestimated. And then as that kept going, I'm like, wait, something's wrong here. So we started.
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, the #1 podcast in Colorado Springs. Who's our highlighted sponsor today?
Proud American Electrical and Solar. Find them at proudamericansolar.com.
That is right. So today we have a guest who's been doing some pretty big things here in the city. We got Jacob Mueller with Renjoy. So Jacob, you've over the last few years, you've been able to grow this business to 200, I think, plus different rental units, right? How are you able to kind of capture the market in such a short amount of time? It's only been 3 years, right? 3 years?
Yeah, that's about right. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show, guys. I'm really excited to be here and share a little bit about our story. It has been kind of a wild ride. Going 0 to 200, there's no secret sauce to making that happen. It's definitely a big part of it. Actually, coming to this building, I noticed the important thing is to start, right? Simon Sinek quote. I don't remember the beginning of it, but it's basically, hey, just start, right? Whether it's small, big, whatever your vision is, just get the ball rolling. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed is just moving forward and actually building something is 0 to 1.
So what do you think? What do you think have been some of this? First of all, what is your business? Let's get into that.
Sure. Yeah. Renjoy is a short-term rental management business. It's like a real estate management business. We specifically focus on Airbnb rentals, VRBO rentals, Booking.com rentals, that sort of thing. We don't manage kind of long-term. We focus on this unique space where guests are typically staying, several nights, 3 to 5 nights out of the week. And we just manage those properties, the whole thing. White glove service, we like to say. Take care of the guests 24/7. We take care of maintenance, cleaning, turnover. A lot of the accounting actually is a pretty complex part of the process. Okay. And then obviously making sure that the properties, the assets themselves are taken care of and retain their value. And the homeowners who are entrusting us with those assets are getting a good cash flow, good return, but also preserving the value of their property.
Yeah, and this is a pretty competitive market, though. To be able to grow so fast, it couldn't have been easy. You had to be doing something.
But we had an edge, right? Anytime you're thinking about starting a business, you want to make sure you got an edge. And for us, the edge was we were already real estate investors ourselves. So we already owned a handful of Airbnbs. Me and my 2 co-founders, Michael and Luke, we owned between us probably about 20 Airbnbs when we started. And so that formed kind of the core of the portfolio. We really didn't intend to manage for other people. We were going to put our properties together and manage them together, kind of make this more efficient because each of us were running our own little portfolios with all of our own little processes. And we decided to put them together. And very shortly thereafter, people were just asking us to manage their property.
Wow.
So that's how we got started. That was our edge. We were familiar with the market. We knew it ourselves as investors, and we built the company to serve investors.
Yeah. And you're from Colorado, right?
Yeah.
Colorado Springs?
Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been here basically my whole life. Did a little short stint in Michigan for college and a couple of years after that, and then came right back.
So we were hearing right before the show that you said that your family helped found TCA, the Classical Academy. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit more about that for folks who don't know, first and foremost, what that K-12 school is, so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. So TCA, the Classical Academy, I mean, I was really young when my parents started. I was not much of an observer in the home. So my version of this story will probably be very limited. But yeah, my parents, along with several other founding families, decided to start a charter school before charter schools were cool. It was very early on in the charter school movement, and they just saw a need in the community for that kind of an education. And it is a classical education. I took Latin. I took a lot of languages. I took a lot of kind of core history. I learned a lot about, that classical education background. And I know that was important for those founding families. I was the first class to go K through 12 the whole way through. As the school was growing, it added more classes, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I got to see the whole thing. I started on the East Campus, then they built the whole North Campus. I moved over there, then they added the Central Campus, and I saw that whole transformation. It was pretty interesting to see. Now, again, I was a kid, high school kid, probably didn't have as much appreciation for what was happening around me as I have now, thinking about the idea of going 0 to 1 with a school like that is actually kind of mind blowing. When I think as a founder, right, I like to start things. I think about that idea of founding a school, and it kind of blows me away because I'm like, I don't even know where to start.
Right.
The funding has to be insane too.
Yeah. With a business, it's already like profit, right? Like revenue, expenses, profit, right? Like at least you've got some measurables, some like metrics there that you can run off of. People have done it before. When my parents were doing this, nobody had really done this.
Wow.
And not nobody, but it was very rare.
Right.
And so you're kind of just making it up as you go. And without the measurables of income, expenses, and profit, it's kind of hard for me to even imagine what it would take to start a school.
And did you grow up North Colorado Springs then too? Because I grew up in Northgate. So
no, I did not grow up in Northgate. Okay. I grew up in Rock Rimmon.
Oh, in Rock Rimmon. Yeah, interesting. So your folks were starting this, and then TCA
shipping us out east. Yeah,
on the north side.
Yeah. Back when Powers was a dirt road. I remember it's crazy how much the Springs has grown. It's awesome.
That's insane. Then you also have your partners, of course, and they grew up. Did they grow up here in Colorado as well?
One of them grew up here in Colorado Springs, and another grew up in Denver. Yeah, actually. So we're pretty Colorado.
Yeah. And what are their names?
Michael Vilpando and Luke Rapenick.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll pop up their Instagram handles, right?
Yeah, they should be on Instagram. Yeah, good luck finding Rapenick. It's like, I don't even know how to spell it. After 4 years of working with him, I still can't spell his last name.
For sure.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Bolton Co. Executive Coaching.
Up feels better than stuck. You know that. But in this market, how do you get unstuck and get ahead as an executive?
Our guy, JB, is an executive coach at Bolton Co. Coaching, where he believes you don't have to change who you are. You just need an injection of effectiveness and a proven competitive edge roadmap for your way up. Head to boltonco.net. That's boltonco.net. ProLift Garage Doors. ProLift Garage Doors are your locally owned and operated residential and commercial garage door experts. From fast repairs and smooth replacements to routine tune-ups, they keep your doors running like new.
Go with the pros at ProLift Garage Doors.
Visit proliftdoors.com to learn more. Be Our Guest Getaways. Be Our Guest Getaways specializes in Disney cruise resort and theme park vacations.
Planning a Disney vacation can be stressful. Let Be Our Guest Getaways provide you with concierge-level service for free.
Learn more at beourguestgetaways.com. That's beourguestgetaways.com.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Mike Schoening Legal Shield.
So you're out here living your best life and suddenly legal drama slides in your DMs. Major L, right?
Bruh, hard pass. That's why you need Legal Shield. They're like the GOAT of legal protection.
Business contracts covered. Traffic tickets, no sweat. 3 a.m. legal emergency, they're up like, say less.
Hit up the link and get Legal Shield now.
Protect your energy, secure the bag, and stay drama-free, period.
Visit mscheoeng.legalshieldassociate.com.
Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericansolar.com. Use promo code COSBusiness for a 5% discount today.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
Well, you have some interesting background things we were talking back and forth about before you got here, but you also have a background working for Sherwell Software, which the guy that founded this space that we're in, Exponential Impact, Vance Brown, also was he was the CEO of Sherwell.
founder, him and a couple of others were the founders of Sherwell. He was kind of the main driving force, Vance was. And I actually interned there for a summer, and then I went to work there. My family was pretty involved also in the founding, actually, of Sherwell. My dad was involved setting up their finances, their corporate structure, a lot of that kind of stuff. So I've been around Sherwell too for pretty much my whole life. Awesome. I remember vacuuming and like cleaning the space before they could actually hire like professional cleaners. It's just
that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, I was in high school and I just did not enjoy it, but I did it anyway because my parents asked me to. So yeah. But then I worked at Sherwell as a marketing manager. So I came in with a little bit of a marketing background. That's kind of how I initially got started. Not exactly, but it's how I got started once I came back here, and then eventually moved into product marketing. So got familiar with kind of the tech development process, learned a little bit about it, thought about a career in it, actually interviewed out in San Francisco, got a job offer at Salesforce. And I really thought about it, and I ended up not pulling the trigger. Just didn't think it was the path for me. But
why?
I think I saw clearly CEO of a fast growing tech company in my future. Or like I saw that, but the path to get there, as I thought about my career and going through the ranks at Salesforce or any other tech company in the Bay Area, it doesn't matter. I was just like, this is going to take me 20 years to get there. Or I could just start my own thing now and just learn from my own failures and experiences and actually grow faster and get to what I want to go, which is the CEO of a fast growing company. It didn't matter to me if it was software or not. I just happened to have a small background in it. And so when I thought about those options, I just decided, I'm going to do my own thing and just start something. I think the second thing that occurred to me too is that if you don't have a passion for software, you don't really want to make a career out of it. And I also saw the hiring manager for me at Salesforce said, when she came in, I flew out. It's a crazy interview process. I don't tell this story, but like you fly out there and you have 3 days of 8 hours of interviews, 3 days in a row with like 20 different teams. It's insane.
Are you paid for this?
No. They pay for you.
Okay.
Yeah. They pay for all of this to go out there. But you're interviewing with a bunch of different teams, not just the team the position you're in for. You interview all of the teams that team works with.
Interesting.
Right? Because all of these teams have to work with you if you end up getting hired.
Wow. Okay.
And so you talk to a ton of people. But anyway, at the very end of this whole process, not quite the very end, almost to the end, I actually meet the hiring manager who I had talked with on the phone and that sort of thing. She had just flown in on a red eye from Japan because she had been in Japan selling Salesforce, and she was just exhausted. I could tell like she got maybe an hour of sleep, just bags under the eyes, just completely beat. And I saw that and I was like, don't want that.
Yeah.
And I immediately was like, I'm not going to take this job. And then the final straw was the head of, I think he was a VP. I don't remember exactly what he was running because this was a while ago, but he was a VP and he totally blew off my interview. And that was the other thing. I was like, you know what? Yeah. I'm not into this.
We'll put up his Instagram handle right here.
Yeah. I don't remember his name, but after that experience, I was like, even though they offered me the job without the VP even interviewing me, I was like, I don't want to go there. The Bay Area just seems rough on you.
Yeah. How if you don't mind me asking, how did he blow off the interview? What do you mean by that?
He didn't show up.
Okay.
I sat in a room for an hour. Yeah.
Wow.
And nobody came to get me. I just sat there for an hour and I was like, all right, I'm in Salesforce Tower by myself. I guess I'm going to leave now.
And you were already kind of on the edge of
after
leaving.
the last interview with the hiring manager.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Yeah.
So
Salesforce is an amazing company. Just I don't dig it on Salesforce. They've done a lot of great things.
I mean, it's one of the big ones, right?
Yeah,
I mean, of course, they're
huge.
Amazing companies. So it's just cool to hear some of that inside stuff that you've experienced. And it's cool that you've been able to start up what you have here specifically in town, your hometown. Talk about that experience as well. Like you're not only going into this, big type of initiative, but you're doing it with 2 other founders, which partnerships, as Andrew and I know, it could be challenging at some points.
Sure.
Talk about the formation of that and like how people were able to segment their roles out, because it's so important. Like we know our roles and what we bring to the table in this podcast, and that's how we can yin yang this thing. But like talk about that for yourself.
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. I think it is complex. People are complex. And so anything that deals with people, whether it's partners or employees or family, I mean, it's just all complex. For us, we were friends first. We were friends who had a shared mutual interest in real estate investing. And that's kind of what we are bonded over. Before we became partners, actually, I was their real estate agent. And so I had worked with them as a real estate agent, learned a little bit about what they were doing with Airbnbs because I wasn't doing them at the time, not seriously. And I saw what they were doing and I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I should get into that as an investor. So I started copying a lot of what they were doing. We started spending more time together. We kind of built that relationship around the real estate investing common interest, but then we found out we actually have a lot of other shared interests, a lot of shared values, a lot of that sort of thing. And one day we saw an investment opportunity and we decided to buy it together. It was a 5-plex downtown, right across from Memorial Park, right across from the skate park.
Okay. Yeah.
On what is that? Pikes Peak and Union. Yep. Right there on the corner. We got an opportunity to basically turn that property around. It was awful. It was like a hoarder's house. You know, you're walking, it's rough 5-plex. We came in, we renovated it. We turned it into 5 Airbnb units. And halfway through, you know, the contract process, we kind of look at each other like, wait a second, we all have our own Airbnb management businesses. Like, who's going to manage this of the 3 of us, right? Because we're all equal partners on this 5-plex investment deal. And we kind of decided at that point to merge our portfolios and run that as a single management company. And in that process, I think we kind of intuitively knew each of us in our roles.
Your strengths.
Yeah, but we never intended Renjoy to be what it is at that time. When we first formed our partnership, when we first combined a lot of our resources, we didn't, it was not really our vision at the time. People started asking us to manage. We said, no. And then eventually I was like, what the heck? Let's see if we can do this for other people. Because we were all passionate about real estate, educating people, teaching them how to do it. I was doing that as a real estate agent at the time. My partners, Luke and Michael, were doing it through a meetup they had downtown, a regular meetup, where they would just talk about real estate. They'd bring people in, that sort of thing.
I might have went to one of those meetups actually when I first came out.
Yeah, you very well may have. Yeah, that's been going on for close to 5 years probably.
Nice. Yeah, 2019. And I was doing some meetups when I first came out here. Yeah. And it was at the Exchange, the top floor.
Oh, interesting.
And was it the same place? Or
we've had it at the Exchange. I don't know if you were at that one, but we've had it there. We've had it at a lot of different places. Right?
And there's a few people that do some things.
There's several. So we all had this passion of like sharing the shared interest and the passion for helping people understand it and learn about it. And so that shared passion kind of led to, you know what, people are asking us to do this. We looked at this space and we said, I don't really trust anybody out here to manage my properties currently. And so let's just start our own management business. At that time, I mean, as things develop and grow, I'm sure your roles have become more clear over time. It's not like you knew exactly where this podcast was going. Yeah, you didn't know. And you learn and you make changes and you shift things as you grow and get better and, you know, things are different. You just learn to evolve your roles. So I can't say that we've always had the same roles within the company, but there haven't been dramatic changes. I think we all have a pretty good amount of self-awareness. I think that's key for a partnership is the person you're partnering with needs to be self-aware because there are going to be times where you disagree and one person's going to be wrong, the other person's going to be right. And that person needs to be able to recognize that themselves.
Right.
Right. You can't make them recognize that about themselves. And so making sure your partners are self-aware and are trying to go in the same direction. Yeah. Competency, of course. You want them to be smart and hardworking. You know, all those high school projects where you end up doing all the work with your partners who don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wish I could say there was like some really clear process I thought through, but
yeah,
I think it kind of happened naturally.
I think that also, like, at least what I can say from my side is I have some level of corporate experience. And I feel like that helped me become a better team player versus like when I first started doing business. Totally. I don't even know if I told Andrew this, but like my first partnership, I was like a tyrant. And I didn't realize until years later, I was like, man, I was kind of a tyrant. I mean, there's reasons probably why I was. But like when I went to work for other like big companies, I realized like the importance of being a team player, accountability, admitting when you're like, hey, I could have gone about that a different way. Even if I felt like I was right, I'm like, hey, I still could have gone about that a different way. The way I approach a situation with a certain personality type, and you learn how to deal with different personalities, right?
Yeah.
There's certain types of personalities where you can kind of come out more aggressive, or you have to kind of ease your way into it. And that's just how it is. That's how business works. And I'm sure that's probably some of the process that you guys have been working through is those personalities kind of in place? Are there different personalities between Michael and Luke, you say? On your team?
Totally. I'll tell you a couple of things about these guys because they're amazing. Luke is the best people person I've ever met. He is incredible at not managing people as in terms of like managing employees, but just really good at understanding where people are coming at, really patient, like really good at de-escalating things.
Relationships.
Yeah, he's just masterful. It's really amazing. But he also has a sales background. So he can do that without, giving or like keeping his boundaries or like reshifting the conversation. Like he's incredible at that. And I'll explain why that matters in a second. And then Michael is just a systems guy. I mean, he was an oil and gas engineer for Kinder Morgan downtown. He just is a brilliant systems-minded guy, loves building things, tinkerer, innovator. He's the reason, I think one of the main reasons Renjoy has been very successful on our back end and how we're going to scale is because of his efforts. So they each kind of have their own mindset, but he's a lot more aggressive, like my way or the highway. He gets heated, like he's very, and there's nothing wrong with it. We all have our own. Yeah, we all have our own. I'm the same way too. I'm more of the tyrant type where I'm like, no, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
The leader, the controller, that sort of thing. And then Luke is more of like, no, everybody, we can figure this out. Let's work together. I will say though, a couple of things. We meet regularly, so we're on the same page regularly, right? That's key.
Oh yeah.
And then we have arguments for sure. Like if you have enough trust within your group, like you can really share what you're feeling and thinking, and you can get heated sometimes. I mean, I think that that's natural, but it goes back to something you said, Marcus, that's really important, which is I recognize that about myself, and I came forward and said, hey, you know what? I got way too heated in that conversation. And even though I still hold those beliefs about what we should do, I'm sorry about how I went about it. And I definitely like stepped on your toes, or I was disrespectful, or like I should have done it differently. And so if each person kind of has that self-awareness and their ability to come back, even after an argument, it can go a long way. It can resolve itself.
It's like magic, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit of magic with you said with Michael, I believe.
Yeah.
With the engineering side, and like Renjoy is just, it's more than just property management, right? There's a level of like tech that you bring in, automations that you're bringing to hospitality. Talk about that element of it and what makes you guys different as well.
Yeah. So going back to when the three of us pooled our resources and started our management business, at the time, it was just for us. Okay. People kept asking. We're like, okay, fine, let's do this. But if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. So what do we want? We're going to build a company. What is it going to be? And that's where we kind of set our big goal, big, hairy, audacious goal, whatever. 10 years, we want 1,000 units. We want to distribute, 100 million in distributions to our owners, like set our really big 10-year goals. And then we worked backwards from there. And so from the very beginning of our company, we were thinking like, hey, whatever we do has to scale to 1,000 units at least. And so we made very different decisions early in our company than we otherwise would have made. An example of that decision is in property management, whether short-term or long-term, they have what's called a PMS, a property management software, right? Vast majority of property managers use that PMS like a CRM, right? Everything's in your CRM or your ERP if you're a bit bigger of a business. It's like that concept. And so everything's in there. Somebody else owns your data and controls your feature delivery, right? They control your product roadmap on when you get what features when, and you don't have that control anymore.
Right.
And so you get locked into that vendor and now you're just kind of stuck with whatever development cycle they're in. Well, we realized two things. One, we have a fast timeline. To get to 1,000 units in 10 years is not easy. That's going to be hard. It's going to be fast. It's going to be aggressive. We can't necessarily wait on some other software company to give us what we need in order to get there. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that this was Michael's huge insight early on. I mean, back in 2021, he realized we need to own our data, right? Most managers put their data in the CRM or in the property management software in their ERP. Somebody else owns the data because it's in their software. And then you just try to interface and pull things out of it. We were like, no. We're going to be data first. We're going to own the data. We're going to control the data. And we're going to use the PMS or other software providers as needed to plug into our data. And then we're going to go from there.
Excellent.
So owning your data was a key thing that we identified early on. And with the massive and rapid improvements of AI, it's turned out to be a really prescient decision.
For sure, yeah.
Gives us a huge edge in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of like the basis of where it started, and how we kind of work backwards from our goal.
So we're talking your own software, essentially, that
kind
plugs
of
into these.
No, we're not developers, right? So we use like a non-coding database, Airtable.
Cool.
Is kind of the product we use, but we use it. We are like power users, right? You know, we have probably at least 100 different databases within it. And each database probably has about 15 tables at a minimum. So we're approaching a couple thousand tables now that are all interacting and connected to each other. It's complex for a non-technical company. It works for us for now. It's not our forever vision, right? It's not like Airtable is going to take us from 0 properties to 1,000 properties. That's not what we thought or how we thought about it. We said, what's the tool that's going to allow us to own our data without killing us on operating expenses with a developer team, a development team? We can't afford that.
Right.
So what's going to allow us to build to the size we need to get before we then now can afford a development team or outsource it? And so we're getting towards that point. At the end of this year, we're going to start thinking about, coding our own database and getting off Airtable.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you. More than just aesthetic and wellness treatments, we provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit revealmedspas.com.
I think it is literally just that too. We'll just double check. Book your next session at revealmedspas.com. That's revealmedspas.com.
Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com. Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP15 for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. And check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
Yeah. One of the agencies I've worked for was called Madwire. Marketing 360 was the software that they offered the clients. And it was the same thing. They built like a huge agency, and eventually they hired 200 software engineers, and they developed a software that everything plugged in. Still the best software I've ever used for marketing today.
That's awesome.
And that was 8 years ago.
Wow.
And it was insane. But yeah, like their vision was very similar to yours. It's like, we wanted to own our data because that's the game. That's really the game, right? Like, why are companies like Facebook or Google, like, why are they so valuable? They have a lot of data, and then when you advertise on those platforms, obviously you get to have access to those data and be able to segment and target and advertise, right?
That's right.
Spend money with them. And so it's so powerful to have that, which is great. And this is year 4 or 5 for you guys.
We're in year 4.
Year 4.
The end of this year will be the end of year 4.
So excellent. And then so talk about that too, because you're talking about to get to 1,000, right? And you're well on your way there 4 years. And talk about that process year over year, because I know when we're reading about you, like, some of the big jumps that you've had in your business cycle.
Yeah, it's hard. Each stage of the business has different problems, different types of problems, and needs you to become a different kind of person. And I think it's been really challenging. Each stage has its own like nuances that are hard and require a lot of thought and personal development.
Yeah.
0 to 200 may not sound like a lot to some folks, but another statistic might help them understand the volume, right? Mm-hmm. We had over 40,000 guests come through our properties last year.
Wow.
And this year we'll have probably about 55 to 60,000 guests come through our properties. 200 properties doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about long-term rental property management or long-term property management. That's, 200 tenants, right? Mm-hmm. This is very different. And so the volume of things that are just happening in the physical real world and having to track and understand what's going on is extremely difficult. And I would say that's probably the biggest challenge is like actually knowing what's going on at, ground zero, like what's actually happening on these properties and relaying that data in a way that can be synthesized and understood at a high level is probably the biggest challenge we're facing kind of right now. But each stage, 0 to 50 is a different problem, right? It's like, how are people going to find out that we exist, right? Like, how are people going to know about us? That's that's their first problem.
Right.
How are they going to learn about us? What makes us different? Why should they work with us? We don't know anything. Then 50 to 100, that's a very different process. Now we have to have like employees and like have to have teams and people doing things for us. Now we have to manage people all of a sudden instead of ourselves. And then 100 to 150, it's like, okay, now we're bringing in housekeeping in-house instead of we're adding the umbrella of services to have better control and better profit margin for the business. Now that's a whole other thing. Now we're employing a lot of W-2 hourly people. That's a whole process. You got to be able to find these people. That's a whole sales pipeline. And then 150 to 200, it's even getting more professional, more managerial, just different problems at different phases. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, that's a great way to answer. I think it definitely does. And it actually spurs some other questions regarding like short-term rentals specifically. I know you talk about like people staying a couple nights or whatever. So we're getting into like the space of like the Airbnbs for our folks at home that we're trying to understand this, right? Like Airbnbs or VRBO, those are, and like, even for us, like I just booked one for June and I've booked many over the years. Like the process of that is, I know, cause I used to be an event organizer of like what that takes. Like you just don't magically walk into a house and it's like super clean and there's instructions there. And has instructions on how do you work Wi-Fi and, close the doors here. Like there's a process to all of that. And there's so much has to be done just for you to get there and for an immaculate house to be clean, ready for you to go in. So talk more about that process. And then of course, engaging with those other types of, Airbnbs and VRBOs out there.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know, short-term rentals are vacation rentals, right? It's where you can book a house and stay there or book a unit instead of an apartment instead of a hotel. The huge difference, like you walk into a hotel and you expect it to be clean, you don't think anything of it. The huge difference is that hotels are all each room is the same and they're all in one physical place, right? And so it is a very different thing to be cleaning a house to that level of quality and to be cleaning 50 of them in one day in the city, all over. And that's not, here it's El Paso County, it's Teller County, it's Chaffee County. We manage not just here. It's a very different thing operationally. There's some consolidation, but you can't really get there until you get a certain amount of scale. So there are some efficiencies that gain with size, but still at the end of the day, you have people driving all over the city with laundry, with supplies, consumables for the guests. You show up, there's coffee, there's other things. We got to take that and resupply it every time. And they're setting that all up, driving all the way back, dropping off the linens to be laundered off site. And they're doing that all over the city, all at the same time on those high turnover days. Very different than a hotel. Much more complex, much more difficult.
I can only imagine
there's a lot
variables that
there's a lot.
What were some early on? I mean, obviously you guys did this separately before you guys came together as a company, but obviously at scale, you run into some really new, like you were saying, 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200. What were some of those early on like problems you're like, okay, I never realized that I'd be purchasing 500 gallons of detergent or whatever it might be. Like, what are some of those problems
that's exactly right. We have this like chemical mixing station in our depot. Like I never thought I never thought I'd have that. I never thought I'd have $100,000 worth of linens, in my inventory. Like I never thought I'd be the guy who owns that many linens, but here we are. There's a lot to unpack there. I think a couple of things. Going back to starting with the end in mind at the 1,000 units, right? Working back from there. When I was kind of thinking through what does this look like on a year-to-year basis, just in the back of my head, back a napkin, what does it look like? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. The first several years, I knew we were going to be unprofitable, right? And I was like, it's like, the check mark, the classic, you have to invest, get scale, and then all of a sudden, you're producing profit. So we're currently on track to be our first year of profit this year, which is very exciting. But along that path, there's lots of things we learned about these turnovers, right? So early on, you just use 1099s. They do a great job, but they're very expensive. We don't have very good metrics. We don't realize, what exactly is happening. We know we're growing the business. It's growing fast. We know we're losing money, but that's okay because we're growing. And then as that kept going and kept going, I'm like, wait, something's wrong here. So we started trying to collect more data and understand. And we found out probably halfway through year 2, maybe the beginning of year 3. And this is more on, my idiocy and not knowing what I'm doing. Found out that we were losing money on every single turnover. What I mean is when a guest books an Airbnb, there's a cleaning fee, right? You pay $150, whatever. We would collect that cleaning fee and we would use that fee to pay for the 1099 contractors to clean the home, to provide the supplies, to cover the costs of cleaning. And ideally, you have a little bit of a margin there, right? We found out we were at a negative margin. So every time we turned a house, we lost, $5 or $7 or $10. And when you start getting bigger, guess what? You're starting to lose a lot more money, right? Because you have more turnovers, right? Your volume is increasing if you're not paying attention to it, improving your efficiency and improving your margin. So we started getting into the end of year 2, beginning of year 3. I'm like, this isn't right. Something's wrong. And I couldn't necessarily put my finger on it, but I had a sense. And so we started getting data. We collected it. We found out, we're losing a ton of money on these turnovers. And that's when we decided to bring housekeeping in-house. But you couldn't do that when you only have 50 properties, right? Like part of the problems and the things you have to shift and understand, you have to have the right problem at the right time, right? If we had tried to bring housekeeping in as W-2s and control that whole process when we only had 50 units, we probably would have failed as a business. You have to do it at the right time. And so it's been a whole process for us learning a lot of those things. And I'm excited to see, what are the new things we're going to learn as we go from 200 to 500, because there's probably a lot we'll need to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like if you're anything like me, like I used to watch Shark Tank when I was younger, and like they always harped on the same thing. They're always like, know your numbers. I'm like, okay, like that makes sense, but I don't know. But like, honestly, man, like as I've grown as an entrepreneur, like that's the only thing that really matters if you want to scale to this, to whatever your dream is, to whatever your goals are, is to know your numbers, and not only know them like the basic numbers, but if you really want to scale, you got to know your number, like be very granular how you do things.
That's right.
And so you're talking about like housekeeping, I mean, like losing $7, but that's 200 doors. So it's, it was
200 doors with 6 turnovers a month.
Oh my god!
So that's 72 turnovers a door. So you're talking about 1,500 turnovers a year. Times 7. That's how much money you're losing just on cleans.
See what I'm saying? So it's insane, and just kind of working your way through that. Was there ever like a mentor or like a roadmap that you can kind of look at and glean at and be like, hey, my friend over here is doing something not exactly the same, but they're managing a lot of doors, and maybe I can glean some really good intel from what they're doing, and maybe some hurdles that they hit, but I can kind of jump over because they can bestow some wisdom on me.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we definitely have taken a lot. We've learned a lot from other people. We haven't necessarily, I would say, like had a really good friend or a mentor, or somebody who really showed us, the roadmap. We kind of have built it ourselves. And to some degree, we're kind of building our own roadmap. We're a little bit unusual in our industry in how we think about data and what we're going to do with it, and how right now, we're not quite at industry profit margins. Next year, I think we'll be at standard industry margins, but then I think the following years, we're going to smash industry margins because of how we're building. So, it's always been the mindset, right? So following somebody else who's built a successful vacation rental management business is not necessarily the path that we wanted to go.
Sure.
It's very linear, right? The traditional model of property managers is you hire a property manager for every 50 or so properties, hire another one when you get another 50, hire another when you get another 50. And they know the person, because the human mind is so incredible, right? The ability to understand information, how things are connected, and make sense of it all is incredible, right? So a property manager, the reason it's been done this way for a long time is because that property manager can know everything about a property up to about 50 properties with short-term rentals. And they know all the guests, they know all the codes, they know the owners, they know every little nuance about that property because they've been managing it, right? So the standard model was very much hire manager, 50 units, hire manager, 50 units, hire manager. Very linear, very clear path, but you're not going to ever beat the industry standard profit margins. It's just 10%, 10%, 10%. And that's not really the path we wanted. So we didn't really want to follow somebody who was doing that. We wanted much more of an exponential business. And so we built our business much more like a standard business. We don't have any property managers at Renjoy. We have departments just like any other business. You got sales, you got operations, you got finance, right?
Yeah.
And everything's under those things. And each department has, sub-departments and all the things that are running. But yeah, so we structured it differently. We saw what people were doing. We also believed, like at the end of the day, like we have a thesis of why we're going to be wildly successful about this. Not because vacation rental management is a lucrative and incredible business. That's not really why. We believed at the very beginning that we can run a much larger portfolio at a much lower cost using technology that has not yet been developed. That's kind of the key thing. Because there's lots of people who've tried this, right? Used to use technology to deliver a hospitality experience at scale. That's not new. But we just saw AI as a huge step change in the ability to deliver that product. And we're beginning to see the fruits of that. And so I think our mindset is we want to be one of the first, if not the first, property management business that is like AI first in how we build and scale and develop. So that's one of the ways that we're really thinking about it.
Yeah, so that's pretty audacious to have that thought. What gave you that thought? Was it a gut feeling, or just seeing what was happening with AI?
Well, I mean, back in 2021, there was not much.
Yeah, not much.
Like, I mean, you're talking about, it was all machine learning, right? That's what people, I mean, it still is machine learning, but that's what people were calling it then.
Yeah, ChatGPT came out in November 2022. So.
Yeah, so this is before GPT even came out. I don't necessarily knew that like large language models were the thing.
Yeah,
right? Like I didn't.
They're pretty under the wraps. Like no one really knew about
I didn't know anything about it. I'm not, I'm not saying I knew.
So it wasn't
that
was
a depression call. No. It was just the belief that technology was developing in such a pace that something very different was going to happen in the near future. Not necessarily knowing what it was, and not necessarily knowing when it was going to happen. But because of that, we said, we don't know what it is. We don't know how it's going to happen, but we do know one thing. It's going to be related to data. So let's find a way to capture, retain, and store data in a way that makes sense, right? That was, again, Michael's insight. And I think that was kind of the key. And then, hey, here comes ChatGPT, large language models. Let's
good timing.
Yeah, let's figure out how to use this. Go beyond that and start using agents and because at the end of the day, you gotta work backwards from what your business is, right? What is property management? Short-term rental property management. You've got two customers, and often they actually are at odds with each other. You've got the property owner who wants, profit and their property to not be beaten up. And then you've got the guest who wants to pay as little as possible and doesn't want to be responsible for anything that happens at the property. And we have to serve both of them, right? This intersection is very complex. But at the end of the day, like what you're managing is conversations, expectations, and then physical functionality, right? Does the hot tub work? Does the fridge work? Is the place clean? Very physical things. So in one way, we have a very strong moat around tech because we have to do physical things in the real world. And robotics is way further away than I think, AI being able to scale hospitality is on a digital sense. So robotics is on the future and I'm thinking about it, but it's pretty far out.
For sure, yeah.
So physical things in the real world give you a moat on the tech, like the ones and zeros side. But on the ones and zeros side, on the data side, very few property managers, in fact, many property managers in this industry are very old school in their thinking on how things ought to run and how they should operate. And so we saw that as an opportunity.
It's funny you brought up the word moat in this exact scenario, because I just learned about that in tech like a couple of days ago. Can you explain what that means, building a moat?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not specific to tech. It's more around back in the medieval ages, right? You had a castle. You had people. You had stuff, right? You had gold, and somebody wanted your gold, and they would just kill you for it, right? And so you would build castles. And one of the things you would do to make your castle even more defensible is you would dig out a moat and fill it with water to make it hard for people to scale the walls, right? Harder for them to come take your gold. So apply that metaphor to the business world. It's whatever your moat is. Let's say your profit, whatever service you're providing, you're making a profit, you're making money. Somebody sees that you're making money. They want to come take your money, right? And if you don't have a castle or you don't have a moat, they're just going to take your money, right? And then you're not going to have your money anymore. And so the idea of a moat is, how can you make it hard for people to take your money, to take your customers, to take your business? How do you make that hard? And not all businesses have, moats. Some do, some don't.
Not all of them need it either. So yeah.
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. But moats, like content. Content's not really a moatable thing. Like, how do you prevent other people from making content?
Yeah.
There's no moat there.
Or like a Mexican restaurant. There might be some moats for that. I mean, but
not a ton.
Yeah.
Not a ton.
Yeah.
But not a ton.
Yeah.
And so we thought very much about moats. We thought it was related to data. And then the other big thing about the industry that we do like relative to other businesses and other industries is it's a very contract-based industry with your clients. So they're all locked into contracts. It's very sticky. So churn is extremely low with properties and owners in our industry, just naturally, because it's very painful to shift management. It's not an easy process. And so you have to really screw up before somebody's going to leave. And so having an industry moat just naturally built in was also something we really liked.
Yeah. Do you guys I could imagine like some of the data you guys could capture that could be like smart for like seeing patterns. Like, do you guys like document like bad experience here, this specific thing happened that way? Like in the data that you have, that's even more enriched that you can like see patterns and utilize AI to be like,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I could only imagine.
Yeah.
Because you have so many people coming through like
yep.
real life data.
Yeah, we have a lot of different kinds of data, right? So we have text data. This is the big thing about large language models. It made text like an actual data point that you could use, where it wasn't really that way before. Or maybe it was. I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, it has a vector in a space where it can relate to other things.
Right. Yeah, but now you can synthesize it in a way that's cogent, quickly and easily, relatively speaking. So yeah, we get data from all of the conversations, right? Those are all being recorded, documented, and synthesized. You get data from all of the reviews, right? And by conversations, I mean text, messages on Airbnb, phone calls even now are being transcribed. Yep. All of our prospect calls with new homeowners, those are all recorded. All of our meetings are recorded. All of that data is being ingested. And then obviously people leaving reviews on the properties, that's also a big part of data that we're getting. And then the homeowners themselves provide data too. That's just the data that we have internally. There's also external data what the market's providing. That's mostly around pricing and inventory, right? Supply and demand of a vacation rental. They're not all the same, right? You can have different kinds of vacation rentals that are serving a different kind of customer, right? Like a big family reunion is not looking for a 2-bedroom apartment downtown, right? So you're not actually competing with a 5-bedroom house, even though you're both Airbnbs, right? But you're not competing. You're not the same supply. You're not competing for the same customer. And so making sure you understand those dynamics, the supply and demand dynamics for your comps, for your property types, the thing you're supplying to the guests, you want to make sure you really understand that from a market level. I don't know if that answers your question, but
for sure, yeah,
that's how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I was just imagining like the cool applications you guys can start building based off of the massive amount of. You guys said you have like what
crazy amount of data,
a crazy amount of people coming through each year. Like I can only imagine. Like
one of the cool things. I'll give you an example of how like we use this data, right? So we bring in not just guest reviews on cleanliness, but anything. If a guest ever talks about cleanliness in any context, that gets synthesized and tied to the cleaner who previously cleaned the property. And then we rank them. So we actually have a dashboard of cleaners and their skill levels based off of customers' experience of their cleanliness scores.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And it's all automated.
That's
so
awesome.
There's this dashboard. We know exactly which cleaners are performing and which ones are not. And we have a PIP is a strong word, a performance improvement plan for housekeeper. We don't have that specifically, but we do have like training programs. Hey, if you're in the bottom third at the end of the week, then you're going to go through a retraining program. And if you still are in the bottom third the following week, then you're let go. And so we actually are able to hold housekeepers accountable in a way that you couldn't really do historically or with contractors.
Dang, that's awesome, man. And you kind of brushed on it like a couple minutes ago, but I was just thinking like, how do you manage expectations of, the guests versus the property owners? And like they're wanting different things from the situation.
Yes. Yeah.
One wants to turn around a house and have a turnkey and have processes in place to give guests and what they want, which is like a great experience. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really hard. I would say one of the other insights we had is related to this in the industry when we were looking at it and thinking about getting into it. Many property managers, we believe, Renjoy believes, are overly focused on the guest and not focused enough on the owner. And when we started our company, we were owners. And so guess what? We built a company to serve owners. And that's actually something that makes us a little bit different. And so when it comes to those walking that line, it's not like, hey, we don't care about our guests. By no means. We do care a lot about our guests. We care a lot about their experiences. We care a lot about taking their feedback seriously. We care a lot about their requests when they want something done, even if it's unreasonable. We still work to try to deliver this great experience for them. This is not me saying we don't care about our guests. This is me saying that our focus and what we're built upon is serving our homeowners, our property owners, our investors. And so when you have that conflict, you better know where you stand. Right? If you don't have a very clear vision as a manager, who you're trying to serve at the end of the day, you're going to make bad calls on who you're serving there. And we see it a lot with people who come from other property managers and bring their properties over to ours. We hear it a lot. They're just like, all they cared about was the guests. They didn't care about me. Like they never communicate with me. They didn't fix things for me. They didn't like hold guests accountable when they broke things, because that happens a lot. Things get damaged, broken, destroyed, whatever. And you don't, because you get a bad guest review, right? When you do that. And the property managers cared more about their guest reviews because it allowed them to capture more future bookings.
And you understand this intuitively.
Yeah, of course. And it's not that it doesn't matter. It does matter. But our mindset is we're here to serve the owners, and we're going to make our guest acquisition very strong and distributed so that we don't rely on Airbnb for 90% of our guests. Because now we have the same problem that we almost had with our data and our property management software provider. We're locked into Airbnb providing us our guests, and we have to do what they say. Well, it turns out Airbnb is not very host friendly. It's very guest friendly. And so we knew that and distributed our acquisition of guests for our owners so that we had a resilient income stream. And we didn't have to rely on reviews from one place or one bad review on one channel, ruining our ability to generate revenue for that property. So that's kind of how we thought about it. There's a lot of nuance there. But I think one of the key things is communicating, right? Hey, beginning of the process, when you're first talking to the homeowner who's interested in signing up, really understand their goals and then really lay out what it's like to work with Renjoy. Same with the guests. Hey, this is the expectations for the property. Here's what you can expect. A lot of that's on your listing and your marketing. And just trying to align expectations with what you're delivering. And if you do that to a reasonable degree and you're consistent about it, people have good experiences.
Isn't that funny how like when you lay out expectations in the beginning of something, how much it makes the rest of the experience so much better?
Yeah.
Even if it's like frank expectations of like, hey, this is how it's going to go. You know, that we have to stick to this. This is why we have to stick to these things.
Yeah.
It makes the experience so much better for everyone. Just aligning expectations. I feel like that's one of the things that entrepreneurs get out, like right out of the gate where they get wrong. And they try to be everything to everybody, and the expectations just go all over the place as being like, hey, here's the expectations going this, here's the standards, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
To make an experience better.
It's funny you say that too, because when you first got here, you asked what the expectations were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, you're trying to create value for you guys, for your listeners, for everybody you know who's involved in trying to make their lives in the city a better place, right? And if you know what the other person's goals are and you're not at odds, right? You can create a lot of value together.
I have a question for you, like personally, like, and you kind of went into this a little bit, but real estate. What was it about real estate that, like, when you got bit by that bug? Talk about that experience, because like a lot of people out there, they might just not be. I mean, that's a hard topic we talk a lot about on this show. Of like, some people think it's out of touch for them and they'll be renters forever. We're in a kind of a weird time, right?
Sure.
We're young people, maybe millennials, even younger was it Gen Z now? Like, they're not. I was like, what generation are we on now?
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting topic for them because they're like, that's great, like it's awesome, but like it seems unattainable for them. So like, what bit you, and then what do you say to folks like that who are looking to get into something like you did? And you had friends who were into it. Like, talk about that and how to get into that too as well.
Totally. I'll give you one example first on talking about the attainability of it, because that's just incorrect. And I think has to do with a lack of education about real estate. And I'll give you a perfect example right now. Okay. Interest rates, 7.25%. Prices haven't come down. Mortgages are like 3 times what they were 3 years ago. Okay. Unattainable. Did you know that you can assume somebody's mortgage? You can just take over their mortgage at 2.25% or 3%. Did you know that?
But they won't. How do you do that though?
The loan has to be assumable, right?
Correct. But there are loans that are assumable, but people don't necessarily know about that or aren't willing to be constrained by the properties that are assumable. It is attainable, but it may not be the house that you want, right? It may have the ability to assume the mortgage and the affordability and all the other things that allows you to buy a home, but it may not be in the exact neighborhood that you want. Is it attainable or not in that case, would you say?
It's definitely attainable.
Yeah, that's what I think. So I think it has a lot to do with education, right? Because I'm a millennial. I own a house, I own I own a lot of houses. I'm no different, right? Like, I'm not special. Anybody could have done it. So I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that there are downsides or things that are harder in one aspect for our generation or for millennials or for Gen Z than for another generation. There's gonna be a lot of things that are harder for others, but there's also things that are gonna be easier, right? Like, I actually think our generation has a much easier time of making money than previous generations to us. Same with Gen Z, actually. I actually think the opportunities to create wealth are way greater than they used to be.
Absolutely.
And you can do it with something that you're actually interested in and find like fascinating. Like, you guys are using a podcast to create wealth for yourselves. Like, that isn't like, it is like a thought that you guys, without any experience in broadcasting could create value for yourselves just by picking up a mic and distributing it on YouTube, which didn't exist, 2 generations back. Like that wouldn't even be feasible or possible. And so, yes, there are challenges. Affordability for housing is definitely hard. But there are lots of other benefits that we get along with that. For me, my story is a little bit different. I started in real estate when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I hated it. My dad had an apartment building and I happened to be the guy who went in and did the turns after tenants moved out. And it was horrible. I mean, this was not a nice apartment building. It was over by the Olympic Training Center, but kind of on the east side. And it was just not a nice place. And I had to I would steam the inside of the windows to get the nicotine soft. And then I would scrape it with a razor off the window. And this yellow goop would be coming off the window. And that's what I was cleaning up.
So that's in people's lungs.
Oh yeah. Horrible. And so as a teenager, I was doing this. I was working my butt off. I was on this roof in the middle of summer. It was a black tar, flat roof, cleaning up the gutters, doing all this. And I was like, man, I'm never going to own real estate. 16-year-old me is like, I'm never going to own real estate. This is the worst. And then in college, during 08, 09, 10, the housing crash, I was a sophomore or maybe a junior. And my dad calls me. He's like, hey, I'm going down to Florida with my brother. We're going to look at some houses to buy. Do you want to come along? And I was like, I don't care about houses or real estate, but sounds like great. You're going to pay for my trip down to Florida and I can just hang out for a few days with you and Uncle Andy. Sounds great. Where I'm in. So we fly down there and that's when I started getting really interested. The night we got down there, my dad got this list of foreclosures and he's like, okay, in one neighborhood near us. He got the list of foreclosures from the bank, looked for the ones that he was interested in, right? And the way it works is they have an auction, okay, for all these properties. And the bank has this auction, or an auctioneer has this auction that the bank hires. And you're not allowed you don't really go to the properties. You don't see them physically, very limited information. And then you just bid, right? And you're bidding with people all over the world. But what my dad's insight was like, well, we have a house in Florida. We live here. Let's actually just go look at the houses and have an edge, right? We're gonna have an edge over everybody bidding because we can actually go and look at these houses, right? We can just look through the windows. We can kind of see things. And so that's what we did. The next day we had a list of 30 houses and we just went down the list. And what we would do is we'd go around the whole house, look in all the windows to look at the condition, right? Because nobody was living there. They were empty, right? They were foreclosed on. And half the houses would be trashed. I mean, people had just ripped out the copper out of the walls. They dinged the stone countertops with like hammers. So they were all chipped. They would take the appliances were all gone, ripped out. Like some would be just destroyed. And then some were pristine, right? Whoever left just like put the key on the table and walked out. Didn't touch anything, wasn't mad, none of that. Pristine. Guess which ones we bid on?
Yeah.
The pristine ones.
Right.
And that process, I was like, wow, this is actually really interesting. So that's where I started getting hooked on real estate. I started learning ever since then. Didn't really start buying until I was 26. When did I buy my first property? Yeah, I think it was 26. But that was when I was 20 that I had that experience. So I didn't go out and buy real estate right away, but I did start getting interested and started reading and learning.
That's really cool.
That's my story. Yeah.
That's a cool story. It's like it's the traditional American dream, right? Buying the house, white picket fence, family or whatever, but then like expanding upon it, of course, to have rental properties and things of that nature. It's so cool. And it's interesting because if you think about it, like maybe the people who are listening to this podcast who are thinking about getting into there and maybe they do like they're top of funnel, your future customers, if you think about it, because they're thinking about this maybe a year from now, they buy a property. They're like, hey, I want to throw this thing around, short-term rental, whatever it might be. Boom. These are the people that, again, 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, year 8, 9, 10 for you, you're rocking and rolling and you have more customers. So it's kind of cool to kind of talk about these things because it's so important. And you're right. Like, it's just the roadmap. Like you just got to hear a story of how it's possible because people are like, I see this and they see it this way when there's so many fun, unique ways to get into real estate. I have businesses. I've entertained acquiring businesses this year, even more so. And that's just as fun, if not sometimes even more fun, just because like it gets a little bit even more creative because there's a little bit less red tape in some ways in business. And it's just like a lot of people just don't realize, the different types of tactics. If you just latch onto someone who's been there, like ignorance tax is taken out.
I think that's right. It's I'll give you another example too of like what you can do, right? People may not even know that if a property is owned free and clear and there's no mortgage, then the seller can generate a mortgage for you and seller finance the property. And you find the right seller, right? You can find a list of these houses that don't have mortgages on them, right? You can generate that list and you can just start knocking on doors. You know what I mean? Like you could just knock on this door like, hey, once they're on the market for sale, right? You don't just want to bother people, but like you find the list and then you cross-reference, hey, are any of these houses for sale? And go up to that door and knock on the door and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm interested in buying your house, but mortgages are really expensive. I'm a first-time homeowner. It's really hard for me to buy something. You give them your story and you say, would you be willing to sell or finance this house for me? I've got a down payment. You know how many times that person would say, yeah, let's do it? I bet you it's more than half. Or the amount of people who want to help the next generation in a way that is mutually beneficial is way higher. And I had that in my experience because I've gotten seller financing before. Mm-hmm. But people don't know that, or they don't want to do the work, right? So I just wanted to give another example where I wasn't just pie in the sky. Hey, all you can do is assumables. That's the only way it's affordable. There are other ways, right? Something else that you said I think was really interesting, talking about housing in our industry, because I think a lot of people have this conception that like Airbnbs are the problem, right, of housing affordability. And that's really not the case at all. It has a lot more to do with interest rates and has a lot more to do with total inventory being built and supplied for the demand. And very constrained, very difficult to build things. I know there's actually a big thing going on in our city right now about annexing another 900 plus acre development or whatever to add 8,500 homes on the east side, concerns around water and other things. But if you want housing to be affordable, you have to build more houses. People are moving here, right? You kind of just have to do it. So I think there's a lot of things involved. It's not Airbnbs. Airbnbs are less than 1%. Less than 1%. I think we're less than 0.5% of the total housing stock on the market. It's not much. So it's not really the driver of lack of affordability. Something else you said too that I think is really fascinating, that's been really cool to see. Because mortgage rates are high and home prices haven't really come down, normally in a normal market, people have to sell their homes in order to move and buy a new home. Well, they don't have to do that right now because their mortgage payments are so low, they can rent out the home. Whether as to a long-term tenant or a short-term tenant, they can rent out the home and cover their mortgage and make a little bit of money and then move off to wherever they're going and buy a new house. And that's very different historically. Historically, people have to sell their houses and so prices would come down. But I think what's cool is that our company, Renjoy, and others makes it possible for you to hold on and actually hold on to this asset, this home, when you move and leave out and rent it out, to create wealth for you and your family over the long term, to create stability for you because you're paying down that mortgage, the really low interest rate. So you're making huge payments against the debt. Your equity is increasing. In other words, your value that you have in the home is increasing. Even if the price isn't increasing, you're still increasing your balance sheet, your personal net worth. And so it's really cool that we get to be a part of that, right? To help facilitate this wealth building for families all over our city. It's really cool. We have a lot of clients who are actually in that position.
Yeah. That's so dang important. And like, I just love hearing your story about your dad and hearing your story about like your family. Do you think, or I guess if you were to poll specific things about your upbringing, being around builders, it sounds like they're just builders, just like you. You end up being a builder. How do you attribute some of your success to your upbringing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say that it was not intentional. I would say that I didn't really know very much about my parents being builders until I was an adult. So it wasn't necessarily that my whole family is very entrepreneurial and that's just built into what we do. I think it's much more of kind of the quiet, get things done type where you don't go on podcasts and talk about it. Like you just do it. You just make things happen and cool, whatever. Like it's not a big deal. Like it was never a big deal to my parents. I've never heard them talk about how proud they are about building TCA. I've never heard them talk about the challenges of building TCA. Right? Like my family is not, it's very much of like, just go and do things and be valuable, right? Like create value for others, right? Serve your country, serve your family, like be responsible. And the reason you do that is because you've been given a lot, right? You're given a lot and so a lot's expected. But really that was about it for my upbringing. I think for me, I stumbled into this match of my God-given traits along with just the right experiences at the right time. I took an entrepreneurship class when I was in college, and actually that class is really what changed the trajectory of my life. And even though I did go work in marketing and I worked at Sharewell Software, I had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit in me that, wasn't going to be held back. And it started in that class, recognizing that I want to do my own thing. I want to be autonomous. Like I want to have control over my life, but I'm also not going to neglect the fact that I have a lot of responsibility to build and give back to our community. So that was my upbringing. Yeah.
Love that. That's incredible. And it's cool to see like a humble type of work ethic / like dedication, and just do it. Like
just do it.
Like Shia LaBeouf said, like, just do it. You know?
Do it.
Totally. It's so important. Like when you just like literally just have that mentality, don't think too much. Like even for a lot of entrepreneurs, like they overthink things. Just like all you gotta do is clock in and do the thing.
Yeah.
Just do it every day. Just clock in. It's like any other habit. And you look back in 20, 30 years, like, wow, holy cow, that's awesome. Okay, let me keep going. With your parents, what is their level of, I guess, reflection now that they see you though? So let's not turn it on them on themselves, but let's turn it on them as they view you.
Yeah.
Have they had conversations with you now that you become a builder yourself and kind of analyze that?
Yeah, definitely. I think they understand how hard it is. It's a cool thing to be able to share with them of like, my dad is one of the few people who can really, I think, listen well and understand what we're going through, all these different stages of like the different challenges, because he was there for Sharewell, right? Through that whole thing. And he's a quiet, humble guy, right? He was listening. He heard from Vance and he heard from Arlen and he heard from Tim Pfeiffer. Like he heard from all those guys, all the challenges. And he was kind of like steady Eddie, just do it, work your way through it. That's my perception anyway. I wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
But it's cool now to be in the room and to be the one who's like, oh my gosh, this thing happened. I'm trying to figure this out and blah, blah. You just kind of it all comes out, right? As an entrepreneur, lots of people don't understand, right? Lots of people don't understand what you're going through, the pain, the challenges, the hardships. Like they can't understand. It's just a different thing. And so oftentimes I find entrepreneurs just don't have an outlet. And one of the great things about my family and about my dad in particular is he can be that for me. And I can just share and he'll understand. It's super cool. And so I think from that perspective, yeah, he's really excited about what we're doing. He's really excited for what we're going to do. Yeah, it's great.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, you hit it right on the nail. Isolation is like one of the biggest things in entrepreneurship, like 100%. Like if you really, really think about it, we talk about that all the time, me and Andrew, of like feeling isolated or being in the muck of things or whatever it might be. It's so true. And that the fact that you have your dad as kind of like a sounding board is, I mean, you're very blessed for that, man. That's really, really cool. And I found myself even in recent years, like my mom's like that for me. She was an executive. She was never an entrepreneur. She's had her own business now in recent years, but it was kind of after I started my stuff years back. And I don't know. There's so much level of respect and gratitude. And even if I'm at a height that I'm kind of in uncharted waters, maybe you are too with your family because you're just in a different water, right? You're in uncharted waters.
Totally.
And they might not necessarily know what to do. Just to listen means everything. I can get out my frustrations. I'm like, all right.
Totally.
Just need to do that. No need for a response. Just need to get it out.
Totally. And I would say there's even like an added benefit to that with my dad. And it's not just somebody who hears, but I know he understands, because when I think about what he went through building TCA or building Sharewell, I'm like, he knows exactly what I'm talking about, even though he's not explicit about it. He wasn't the one running the company or leading the charge. He wasn't necessarily in my shoes. He's been around that experience. And so it's more than just listening, it's understanding. And I think that's really rare.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's so great that you've had that support and
It's
what
cool.
you've been able to build. It's super impressive. We've been super excited to get you on the show. It's been like 4 months, I think. Since we scheduled you and booked you. We have a pretty tight wait list, guys, at home.
It's true. Get booked now. It takes a while.
But like I said, thank you so much for bestowing so much knowledge, and so cool to see folks like you in our town. Again, we're just trying to tell the story of like just people doing incredible things. Started with Andrew, just with an iPhone, just like starting this whole thing, which is
that's how it goes.
Which is it's cool to see where things go and how we build things together. But we understand like the agony that is to be an entrepreneur, to always wake up with a problem that you don't know how to solve on your plate every day for years on end, and this like the arduous type of like things you have to go through, the pressure you have to go through, the stress you have to go through while you're trying to have a personal life or be married or have kids or whatever it might be in your life. So there's much respect there, man. Really, really much respect. And
thanks.
we always end it with a couple of questions. And I'll give you your camera here in a second, but
yeah, no problem.
If you were to give yourself advice day one, opening up Renjoy with Luke and Michael, what advice would Jacob now give Jacob back in 2021?
I would probably just say it's worth it, right? Like not necessarily because of where you're going to end up, but because of the process of building and growing a business or a brand or content, whatever, a channel. Just the process of going through that, what you were talking about, waking up with the struggle and having to figure something out. You have to learn more about yourself. You have to learn more about discipline. Like you have to really grow every day as an entrepreneur. And so if I was looking back at myself, I would say, hey, it's going to be hard and it's totally worth it.
Mm-hmm. Is there one thing you would have done differently that would have saved you a lot of money?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things. We have lost a lot of money doing stupid things. I would say the one thing that I wish we had done differently is I wish we had really been far more thoughtful about accounting. Mm-hmm. I know this is not the thing many people would expect, but in our industry in particular, what's weird about it is we have what's called trust accounting. So you own an Airbnb property. We're managing it for you. A guest stays at your property. We collect the funds, but it's your money. And so we have to hold that in our trust account. And the whole thing around trust accounting and generating statements and tracking money moving every which way, how we're spending it, making sure it gets assigned to the right owner and in the right way, and making sure it's explained to the owner so they understand. The whole accounting process is far more complex than I had ever imagined. Mm-hmm. And it was the thing I most greatly underestimated about the business.
And when something's that daunting, it's easy to neglect.
You start going. Yeah, you're at 100 units. All of a sudden, you're like, oh shoot, we're moving a lot of money. There's a lot of transactions, and we are not that accurate with where things are going. And we have a lot of errors, and we have to fix a lot of things all the time. And the machine is going, right? The plane's flying. You got to fix it and figure it out while it's flying, while you're growing. You're adding more unit. It compounds. Your problems compound, right? If you don't take care of them and you don't understand them, they compound because you can't stop growing. You can't say, stop, pause. Let's not grow anymore until we figure out how to do this. You can't do that.
Right.
You have to keep moving forward, and you have to fix it at the same time. That's probably the greatest challenge about entrepreneurship.
Gosh, yeah, I've dealt with that many times in the businesses I run, and even processing fees. I wasn't accounting for processing fees. For me, taking on someone's money, processing fee, and then paying that I was losing money in different ways.
Exactly. And you don't even realize it until you're wait, where is all this money? Where's this $10,000 coming from on my P&L? What happened here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Jacob, thank you again for coming on, man. This has been awesome, super insightful. We haven't had someone in real estate on quite some time, right?
Maybe since Phil.
Wow. 4 years.
Maybe. There's probably a couple. I don't know. Yeah.
We had a stint for a long time.
Oh, yeah, Ryan on Van Ornum.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Ryan's great.
Oh, you know Ryan Van Ornum?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, we had a stint for our first year I was with Andrew of we had a lot of real estate folks on. We're all right, let's take a break. And then we took a 4-year break.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens, right? In zero interest rate environment, real estate's hot. Everybody's doing it. So it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jacob. Well, that's your camera. Where can we find you?
Cool. Yeah. You guys can find us really easily on our website, just www.renjoy.com. And there's a lot of great stuff on there, whether you're looking to book a place, find a place for your family, or looking to maybe talk to a property manager. We'd be happy to chat.
Awesome.
All right. This has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one. All right.